Being alone can nourish your soul more than any relationship could. That may sound bold or even uncomfortable, especially if you were raised to believe that love is the ultimate answer, that being alone signifies failure, and that healing can only come from others. However, Carl Jung understood something much deeper. Some wounds can only heal in silence, some strengths are born when no one is watching, and some versions of your true self can only appear when you stop chasing people at any cost. In this video, you'll learn why consciously choosing solitude can unlock your most powerful transformation, and by the time it's over, you won't feel desperate for connection, you'll embody it. Stay with me until the end, as I'll show you how to turn your solitude into strength, even if it still aches right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. This channel delves deep into transformation, self-awareness, and psychology as it happens, raw and unfiltered. From a young age, we are taught that being alone means something's wrong. A quiet child is labeled as troubled. A single adult is seen as incomplete. Silence is filled with noise, entertainment, and chatter, anything to avoid the discomfort of a quiet world. Carl Jung said becoming whole requires going inward, but society taught us the opposite. We were programmed to seek identity through others, to build a mask, a social persona that pleases, adapts, and avoids rejection. Over time, we confuse connection with dependence, and the more we cling to this pattern, the scarier being alone becomes. But solitude doesn't hurt because of the present moment. The pain that surfaces when you're alone is from the past. Old wounds, unhealed rejections, forgotten abandonments. These come up when there's no one left to perform for. It's the ego that panics in silence because it needs attention, approval, or someone else's presence to feel real. The soul isn't afraid of silence, but the ego is, because it was trained to survive by being accepted. To the ego, solitude feels dangerous, but to the soul, it's a calling. Jung believed that retreat isn't an escape, it's a rite of passage. When you're alone with no distractions, what arises isn't emptiness, but unconscious material you've suppressed for years. That's where real inner work begins. Being alone can be deeply uncomfortable, forcing you to feel instead of react. And this shift is incredibly difficult. But this discomfort is the start of individuation, your journey to becoming whole. When you stop running from silence and start listening to it, you won't find weakness, you'll find clarity. You're not being punished for being alone, you're being invited to reconnect with your essence, maybe for the first time without filters or intermediaries. That reconnection doesn't bring fireworks, it comes with stillness, sometimes even a void that feels hollow. But within that emptiness, the soul begins to breathe again. Carl Jung called this individuation, the path to becoming your authentic self. Not the version others projected onto you, not what society demanded, but what's always lived inside of you. And this path doesn't begin in noise. It starts when you consciously step back, when you stop distracting yourself and finally look inward. This kind of withdrawal isn't escape, it's bravery. It's you telling your unconscious, I'm ready to face what I've avoided. It's the moment the character steps aside for the real person to emerge, the moment the spotlight fades and you meet the actor behind the mask. Society taught us that stillness equals loss, that solitude means weakness. But Jung saw it differently. Stillness is where the true self, the core of the psyche, begins to reveal itself. And that revelation doesn't happen with noise. It's subtle, quiet, almost invisible at first, but profoundly powerful. When the noise fades, you hear your soul. And it doesn't shout, it whispers. It uncovers memories, gut feelings, and buried emotions that were hidden beneath stress, distraction, and the urge to please. At first, this can feel strange. You might not recognize yourself without your routines, roles, or relationships. But that's the sign you're on the right path. The true self isn't something you build overnight. It slowly appears when there's enough space inside for it to rise. This is not a straight road, it's a deep inward journey. You don't gain, you shed. You stop searching outward and return inward to something essential that can only happen when you consciously step out of the world and into yourself. Solitude then stops being a lack of something. It becomes presence. Presence so rich that you finally notice what's always been inside you, just waiting for space to emerge. In this sacred space, something subtle but powerful happens. What once felt solid within you starts to crack, but it's not falling apart, it's opening up. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the mask we wear to function in the world. It's the role we play, the polite one, the strong one, the fun one, the capable one. The persona isn't fake, but it is limited. It's designed to fit in, to protect, to belong, but eventually it stops fitting. And this shift usually begins in silence. When life is busy, full of people and pressure, the persona acts like armor. But when things quiet down and no one's watching, that armor begins to crack. You realize many of your thoughts, feelings, and actions were just automatic responses, emotional habits, learned behaviors, ways to gain acceptance. And when that performance ends, it can feel terrifying because what remains is just you, unfiltered, unpolished, and real. But that's also the moment your soul starts to show up. Jung said individuation only begins when the persona loosens its hold, and that doesn't happen by force. It happens gently when you stop feeding the role and start nurturing your real self. Yes, it feels unsettling. You might feel like the ground beneath you is disappearing. You may feel lost, but that's not confusion. It's the beginning. You're letting go of the version of yourself you were trained to be and making space to discover the person you really are. At this point, sadness, anger, even fear might arise. That's normal. The persona has been with you for so long, it felt like your identity. As it fades, repressed emotions rise to the surface. But this isn't a breakdown, it's a release. The unconscious is clearing out what no longer serves you. Solitude now becomes more than just an outside condition. It becomes an internal tool. It acts like a mirror, showing you, stripping you down, and helping you heal. You're not losing yourself, you're peeling away the layers. And what remains, once all the noise and roles are gone, is the start of something real. Something that doesn't need applause. Something that only blossoms when you stop running from yourself. When the mask falls away, what shows up first isn't always ease or comfort. The shadow has weight. It's like stepping into a room that's been sealed for years and watching dust stir in the stillness. Silence stops being just an absence of sound. It turns into a mirror. And in that mirror, you're confronted with every feeling you've avoided your entire life. In Jungian psychology, this hidden material is referred to as the shadow. It includes all the parts of yourself you chose not to see. Your pain, fears, impulses, trauma, and shame. Not because you were fragile, but because at the time you lacked the space or support to face it. The shadow holds all that was rejected, dismissed, or labeled unworthy. And when you stop running, when you stay still long enough, it begins to surface. Old memories resurface. Emotions you thought were long buried return with force. A nameless sorrow, a directionless rage, a fear that seems endless. In that silence, everything starts to speak. This is where most people turn away, returning to distractions, unfulfilling relationships, or the safety of routine. The shadow is painful. Confronting it takes effort, awareness, humility, and patience. There's no spotlight, no recognition, only honesty. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's what you're experiencing now. You're not falling backward, you're cleansing. The pain isn't punishment, it's the beginning of release. Yes, there will be moments when you'll want to give up. There comes a point when you may question whether it's worth continuing. But it's important to know that this moment isn't the end. It's the middle. It's the turning point. The darkest moment right before the light returns. It's the phase in your journey when everything inside you wants to turn back, yet your soul has already started moving forward and doesn't want to repeat the past. This is the stage where many lose their way, but it's also the place where some are reborn. Those who stay present in this difficult moment move through a gateway. Those who face their shadow head-on realize that behind it lies strength, awareness, and power. You are not falling apart, you're being reprogrammed. And what's surfacing, no matter how messy, is the raw material of your transformation. The real question is, will you walk away from yourself again, or will you keep moving forward despite the fear? But let's be honest, not everyone chose solitude. Some were pushed into it, they were hurt, ignored, or left behind. And that changes everything. Choosing to be alone can be empowering, but being left alone feels like pain. There's a difference between waking up and choosing to spend time with yourself and waking up to realize no one stayed, no one listened, and no one came back. Many people hide deep loneliness behind the mask of independence. They've learned to rely on themselves because they've been let down too many times. They've built walls, not because they enjoy silence, but because closeness became painful. But that kind of distance doesn't heal, it hardens you. Jung warned that when a soul becomes too isolated, it starts to collapse inward. When isolation becomes a survival mechanism, life energy stops flowing. The person begins to live in constant defense mode. What appears to be independence is often just fear. Fear of trying, fear of connecting, fear of being hurt again. The line between solitude and isolation is thin, but it matters. In solitude, you reconnect with yourself. In isolation, you protect yourself from the world. One leads to healing, the other leads to hiding. That's why it's important to ask yourself honestly, did I choose to be alone, or did I just get used to being abandoned? Am I really at peace or just emotionally numb? That kind of reflection can be uncomfortable, but it's the beginning of change, because until you face that pain, you stay stuck in the same loop. Pain that isn't felt repeats itself. Pain that's avoided becomes a pattern. And often, the phrase, "I don't need anyone," is just hiding the truth. No one ever truly chose me. You're not broken, you just had to protect yourself. But maybe now it's time for something different, a time to let silence be a choice again, not a sentence. Time to let go of the weight of abandonment and begin walking toward yourself, not with armor, but with presence. True solitude heals. Forced solitude harms. Understanding that difference is self-care in its truest form. And it may be your first real step toward living in peace with who you are. When your soul finally starts to feel safe, your body responds too, because your body had to survive. It braced itself for rejection, for criticism, for abandonment. It tensed up just to make it through. For a long time, maybe you didn't even realize how much you were living in survival mode, always expecting something to go wrong, always holding your breath, shoulders tight, heart guarded. But as you begin to allow solitude, not as punishment, but as a space for reconnection, your nervous system gets a new message. You are safe. Carl Jung once said, "The unconscious isn't just in the mind, it's stored in the body." Every emotion you didn't process became tension. Every unresolved story turned into a physical block, unexplained aches or chronic fatigue. That's why real transformation can't happen only in your mind. It has to be felt, processed, and lived through your body. And that's exactly what starts happening here. You begin to breathe more fully, sleep more calmly, stop needing to explain yourself, defend yourself, or prepare for the worst. Your body begins to align with the present. And for the first time, the present doesn't feel like a threat. This shift isn't abrupt. It unfolds gradually, yet it's profoundly freeing. It's the moment you recognize that you no longer need to stay on high alert. You realize it's possible to exist without constantly proving your worth. You learn it's safe to feel your emotions without being consumed by them. This state isn't about disconnecting, it's about alignment. It's when your mind, body, and soul begin to move in harmony, a rhythm that doesn't demand effort to maintain, a sense of worth that isn't tied to external validation, a peace that doesn't rely on someone else's approval. Solitude no longer feels like a burden. It becomes a steady, known place within you, a space of internal balance. And that place doesn't reject the world. It simply doesn't rely on it for your grounding. You begin to see that there is resilience in gentleness. That true protection comes from presence. Being alone no longer feels like exposure. It feels like completeness. And when your body senses this truth, it relaxes its defenses, drops them, and for the first time in a long time, you are simply allowed to be. No pressure, no urgency, no fear. When the body relaxes and the nervous system settles, something begins to rise, quietly, yet unmistakably. It's a gentle awareness, not loud or forceful, like a soft inner whisper. It brings a sense of knowing you can't quite explain, only feel. That is intuition. Intuition doesn't fight to be heard. It doesn't try to cut through the world's noise. Instead, it waits. It waits for you to pause, stop chasing explanations, external validation, or definite answers, and start trusting the wisdom that already lives inside you. Not gone, just resting. Carl Jung saw intuition as one of the psyche's 4 essential functions. For him, it was the ability to grasp deep truths and hidden patterns without relying on logic. An intelligence not born from the mind, but from the soul. And it only shows itself when there's enough inner quiet to hear it. In this grounded presence with yourself, you begin to feel what's right even before you understand why. You sense direction before signs appear. It's not magic, it's inner alignment. It's your psyche working in harmony, free from confusion, free from noise. You begin to notice the small shifts and unease you used to overlook. A sense that something no longer aligns with who you're becoming, a quiet nudge pulling you a different way. And gradually you begin to trust that feeling. You begin to follow less of what the world demands and more of what your soul is quietly guiding. This inner clarity doesn't need proof. It doesn't argue its case. Because when you're in tune with yourself, doubt fades. And in its place comes something rare, calm confidence. It's not pride. It's a deep knowing, not from ego, but from your true self, the most honest part of you, the part that always knew but was never given room to speak. This is the real power of intentional solitude. It doesn't just mute the outside world, it reveals a whole new inner one. A world where answers aren't hunted, they're recognized, and where being present doesn't just feel peaceful, it becomes your compass, your future self. When your intuition awakens, something profound stirs within you. You stop looking for direction outside because now it rises from within. And with this inner clarity, an image begins to form, your future self. But this isn't about striving for a flawless version of yourself or forcing a change. It's more subtle. Bit by bit, you begin to tune into the energy of the person you're becoming. And instead of chasing them, you start walking alongside them. In Jungian psychology, the self is the symbol of inner wholeness, the complete and balanced image of your soul. Your future self is a reflection of that journey. Not a goal to be reached, but a deeper guidance, a living inner compass. You start to understand that what you were seeking out there was never really missing. It has always existed within you, waiting for room to grow. And when you begin to live in tune with that energy, choices become simpler, boundaries firmer, and relationships gain clarity and depth. Your future self doesn't demand struggle. It invites quiet attention. It doesn't criticize who you are now. It respects every step you've taken to get here. And the more connected you feel to this inner presence, the easier it becomes to say no to what no longer belongs, and yes to what truly speaks to your soul. It's like stepping into a new energy, a space. Even before anything changes around you, you feel peace before the success, freedom before anything shifts on the outside. And that grounds you deeply because now you're acting from a strong center, not just chasing something distant. This shift is silent, but it transforms everything. What was once a goal becomes a natural state. What was once a dream becomes a lived reality. You stop waiting for the world to change so you can feel peace. You begin to live in peace, and the world responds. This presence doesn't demand, it doesn't chase, it simply leads. And in leading, it transforms. You're no longer escaping your past or just fixing the present. You're becoming someone who can carry the very life you once imagined. Up until now, much of your path has been about healing, quieting the inner noise, facing your pain, and holding space for growth. But something shifts when you align with your future self. You stop trying to fit in. You begin to embody your truth. Gradually, your energy stops being a reaction and becomes a calm presence. You no longer respond to every demand, every expectation, or every bit of noise. You begin to emit a frequency that originates from within, a frequency that naturally reshapes your environment. In analytical psychology, Jung described the self as the inner organizing center. When you're in tune with it, your energy aligns. You're no longer driven by fear, by the hunger for validation, or by the anxiety of being rejected. Your emotional world starts to come together, and the world around you senses the shift. People begin treating you differently. Situations that once repeated themselves fade away. Draining relationships fall apart. Not because you became someone else, but because you stopped holding the energy that kept them alive. You no longer need to prove yourself or be understood. Your presence speaks for you. I've heard myself. I've honored myself, and I won't abandon myself anymore just to fit where I don't belong. This isn't arrogance, it's integrity. You don't dominate, but you stand tall. You don't shut down, but you also don't shrink to please. And that quiet confidence becomes magnetic. Because where once there was searching, now there's grounding. You begin to attract experiences that reflect your new inner state. Not as rewards, but as natural reflections of the person you've become. Your outer world starts to mirror your inner world, and that changes everything. This is the power of conscious solitude. It doesn't just reshape you from the inside, it reconfigures the space around you. You start to experience something powerful. You don't need to chase belonging when you already feel whole. Now your presence doesn't ask, it radiates. And what it sends out begins to return. As your energy balances, love transforms too. It no longer feels like a place where you lose yourself, but one where you share freely. You no longer long for someone to complete you. You're complete enough to love without losing yourself. Conscious solitude teaches this. It shows you that you can be fully yourself without needing romantic attachment to feel whole. It teaches you that peace isn't tied to anyone's presence and that real love only flourishes when you're no longer looking to be saved by it. Carl Jung once said, "No healthy relationship can be born from dependency. For a true meeting of souls, each must find its own center. Otherwise, love becomes fusion, and fusion eventually becomes a prison." You begin to clearly see the bonds you once clung to in fear, the compromises you made just to avoid abandonment, the silence you accepted just to keep things calm. But now, those patterns feel completely out of place. Because when you're whole, your art can no longer accept what damages your core. And that doesn't mean closing off or becoming distant. It means loving with greater depth, with honesty, with full awareness. It means loving from fullness, not from emptiness. Loving because you choose to, not because you need to be rescued. In this state, you no longer wait for someone else to recognize your worth. You don't change yourself to gain shallow approval. You show up completely, and because of that, you only stay where your wholeness is seen and respected. This kind of love doesn't seek control. It doesn't plead for attention. It simply flows. And when it meets someone equally grounded, it creates something rare, a connection where both can walk side by side without either one needing to shrink to make space for the other. This is what solitude prepares you for, a heart that can hold love without losing itself in the process. Active imagination. When love enters your life, it doesn't seek broken halves to complete. It looks for someone who already feels whole, someone who chose to stay with themselves before welcoming someone else in. Now that you understand the power of conscious solitude, a new question may surface. How can you maintain this state in your everyday life? The answer lies in a simple yet powerful word: presence. And the best way to build that presence is by creating a space where you reconnect with the peaceful version of yourself that already exists within. This exercise is rooted in the practice of active imagination, a core idea in Carl Jung's work. Unlike simple positive thinking, active imagination acts as a bridge between your conscious mind and your unconscious world. It's a symbolic conversation with the deeper layers of your psyche, one that can lead to meaningful transformation in how you feel, choose, and live. The goal is to create an internal meeting with what Jung called the self, your inner wholeness, your quiet wisdom, and your natural direction. To begin, set aside a few minutes for silence, but not just any silence. This is intentional silence with a purpose. Here's how to do it. Sit somewhere peaceful, close your eyes, and breathe deeply until your thoughts begin to slow down. Then, in your mind, repeat the phrase, "I am here." This isn't just a mantra, it's an anchor. It's your way of returning to yourself. Next, let your imagination flow without forcing anything. Picture a version of yourself who already lives in inner peace. This version may come to you as a clear image or simply as a calm feeling. What's important is that it represents alignment, clarity, and truth. Watch this version closely. How does it move? How does it breathe? How does it face life's challenges? What burdens has it already released? Then ask two questions in silence. What did you release to reach this place? What do I still need to understand? And then just listen. The response may come as a word, a picture, a memory, or even a meaningful silence. Don't overthink, just receive. When you're ready to finish, thank this version of yourself. Quietly say with intention, "I see you and I walk toward you." This closing phrase seals the experience. Remember, this isn't about escaping reality. It's about reconnecting with the most aware, grounded version of who you already are. Though simple, this exercise works at a profound level. It trains your mind to return to presence. It shifts your attention inward, and over time, it strengthens your bond with the most complete part of you. It's symbolic, yes, but symbols carry real power. Because every new chapter begins with a quiet gesture, a decision that says, "I've come home." You are not empty. You are full of yourself, full of pieces you had forgotten, hidden, or silenced in the name of relationships that never truly saw you. Conscious solitude didn't leave you isolated, it brought you back to you. For a long time, you believed you needed someone else to feel whole. You thought the pain of being alone meant you were failing. But maybe now you realize that pain was actually the beginning, the first step. Carl Jung once said, "The most important encounters are the ones we have with ourselves." And maybe this is the most powerful one yet. The moment you stop avoiding yourself and start looking at yourself with awareness, not judgment, but honest curiosity. What came from this wasn't numbness, it was strength. You didn't become cold, you became whole. Now you carry a peace that doesn't rely on others. You have clarity that needs no outside validation, and you radiate an energy that no longer conforms to chaotic spaces because it has learned to shine with its own truth. This isn't isolation. This is self-choice. You're growing inner roots. So, if love arrives, and it might, it finds rich soil, not barren land waiting to be rescued. This journey isn't about pushing love away. It's about preparing yourself so that relationships are no longer hiding places, but mirrors, reflections of the wholeness you've already built. And now that you've come this far, ask yourself, what changed within you during this journey? What did you learn about your solitude and about your own presence? If you're still with me, leave a comment below. My presence is enough. This phrase is more than a signal that you watch to the end. It's a promise you're making to yourself. And if this message spoke to you, if it helped you see solitude differently, consider supporting this channel by clicking the thanks button below. Your support, beyond being deeply appreciated, allows me to continue creating thoughtful, researched content. With your help, this message can reach more people who need to hear what you just heard, that sometimes being alone is the fastest path back to who you really are. Thank you for your presence. I'll see you in the next video.